Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to today's broadcast. It's the Thursday, July 2nd, 2026 episode of the Marco Dure Show, the only show where the facts are facts and our truths thrive. Thank you again, everybody, for being here today, as always, as we now enter the Independence Day weekend here in America, celebrating our 250th year anniversary, ladies and gentlemen. I'll have a program for you tomorrow, of course, so don't think I'm going to skip out on you just so quickly. We'll have a program for you tomorrow. We'll talk about all things economics and, of course, Independence Day itself and why it's so significant to we, the American people. First things first, though, I want to talk about a major development going on right now in Europe right now. This is something we've got to discuss because seldom does it get discussed today. We've neglected what's happening with Russia because of what's taking place in Iran. I think that's fair to say. And I want to make sure I'm going over this with you so you're keyed in, so you understand what's going on with Russia and where do we stand right now with this conflict we seem to continue to find ourselves in. Of course, yet no peace was ever made. That was a Trump campaign promise. Now, while he had the meeting in Anchorage with Vladimir Putin, nothing came from it. Absolutely nothing came from it. We know now money in the NDAA has been allocated, not as much, certainly from the Biden era, but there is still money being allocated to Ukraine coming up. We should be stopping this. This should be ending sooner rather than later. This is 4.5 years of conflict of which the Ukrainians were never, ever going to win. I think that's the part that upsets me the most. This war could have been over in about roughly a month. Instead, we're now 4.5 years into it. It's very devastating what's going on to the Ukrainian people. But here we go. Yesterday evening, Russia launched a barrage of drones and missiles in Kyiv. So now we're actually getting the missiles and drones hitting Kyiv now, which I never believed Putin would do. There's lots of Russian history inside of Kyiv. The Orthodox Church was founded in Kyiv. And the Ukrainian officials have described this as a night of horror for the capital. At least 20 people have been killed. That's according to local officials right now. 80 people have been injured. And search and rescue teams are still underway to find out if there's any more. But Russia launched more than 70 missiles at various types against Ukraine overnight. Now, based on what I can tell from this article in Time, coming from the Russian Defense Ministry, again declaring and agreeing that this has been a massive attack against the Ukrainian people. However, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that the assault had been aimed at military or military-related facilities, again, vowing that Russia will continue to increase pressure on Ukraine in order to achieve its goals. Now, what are these goals? Number one, they want the Donbass for themselves. That's first and foremost. They want the Russian speakers in that region that have been at assault by groups like the Azov Battalion, the people that have been shelled in years since the Maidan Revolution, of which we fomented, by the way. Yeah, they want those people to be free. They want to be back incorporated as part of Russia. That's why this conflict began. And again, they do not want Ukraine to join NATO, that's first and foremost. Again, the fact that the Europeans are funding this war and are the main benefactors and the reason why this is going on definitely puts us straight on Russian and, of course, European relationships, especially moving forward. Now, the strikes were reported at more than 30 locations across every district of Kyiv, including residential neighborhoods, driving citizens into bomb shelters, and underground metro stations. Again, this is what's coming out of the reports from Ukraine. But here's the thing I want to say to you about this. We have people like Zelensky, right? Zelensky, the lunatic, the failed comedian, the failed actor, the guy who plays the piano with his putts. I mean, this is who this guy is. All 5 feet of him. What is he, 5 foot, 5'1"? This guy is prolonging this war. Where are the elections? Didn't Trump say last year we were supposed to have an election cycle to see who would replace Zelensky, to see if we can get some peace? Because you're not going to get it with this guy. This guy is going to follow everything the oligarchs of Ukraine tell him to do. It's an unbelievably corrupt country, folks. I tell it to you how it is. But again, these are the people leading Zelensky. They do not want to surrender. They want this war to go on. God knows how much money these people will be making off this. But last week, get this, last week, Zelensky approved a 40-day influence operation for the security service of Ukraine against the aggressor state aimed at compelling it to end the war. I want you to think about that for a second. Who made the first misstep? It wasn't the Russians. It was the Ukrainians. It was the Ukrainians, again, think of the Azov Battalion, shelling into the Donbass region, killing ethnic Russian speakers that they themselves want to be annexed back into Russia. Now, Vladimir Putin saw this taking place, saw this happening, said no more. We're not going to allow our own people to be killed by the Ukrainians in an effort to do this. So what did he do? He enters the Donbass, again, to save them. It wasn't just an invasion to take land, folks. I don't even know if you would even call it. What would you call that? If your people are being slaughtered by another group of people, you would call that, of course, saving them. There's no other way to say it to you. That's the way it is. So this idea that Putin's a madman, Putin wants to, remember at first they tried to tell us that Putin wanted to take Ukraine, then he's going to take all of Eastern Europe, then he's going to go into France. It's ridiculous. It's never going to happen. In fact, the people I was listening to at the time, that's when I started shaking my head going, what are they talking about? Trying to say he wanted to be Catherine the Great. Now, this is how he envisions to incorporate much of Eastern Europe back into Russia and the Russian Empire, and this is what Putin wants to do. He's a madman. None of it's true. He wants Crimea. That's first and foremost. That's where the Russian Navy has always been stationed. But now he wants, of course, the Donbass region and eastern Ukraine right now. He wants Zaporizhia, which again adjoins Crimea, and of course, Kherson, which is right next to that. He wants these regions. And I believe he will get them. I think what you're going to see right now, especially the way Zelensky's been acting, and I say this with caution, because again, it seems like Zelensky's now not coming to the United States because he knows he's probably not going to get much of anything. But he's really trying to go to the European leaders, and many of them right now, especially in the European Council, have repledged their support for Ukraine and its people. Well, what kind of pledge is this, by the way? When you are pushing them further and further into more war, a war that they cannot win. They cannot withstand the Russians. I'm not saying they're not fighting hard, fighting with honor. I'm not saying Ukraine doesn't have tough soldiers. But I am saying it's not a match for what Russia has. And when you see the scale of, for every one Russian killed, you have 36. That's what the estimate right now is. 36 dead Ukrainians. I mean, we look at the size and the scope of both countries, folks. That's not going to work out. You also have a lot of Ukrainians fleeing right now. Men do not want to fight. They don't want to go to the front lines. They know it's a death sentence for them. They don't want it. At one point during the war, they had to get teenagers off the streets in order to send them to go die for Ukraine. This should not be happening. Rather, there should be, obviously, the war ending. But they need new leadership. Nothing is going to end with Zelensky. Zelensky will keep the status quo. He will keep pushing forward with this. And that's why we're seeing now Putin has done what I said needed to happen. He needs to take Kyiv. That's the way this ends. You have to take over the capital city. And then it's over at that point. So I think what we'll see right now is a strong offensive from the Russians right now. And especially because Putin understands that back home he's got some issues as well. Certainly with the economy, he's got some minor issues going on right now. Think energy, for that matter. And again, people want this to end in Russia as well. And Putin, by the way, has elections this year just like President Trump has. So he's got to be aware of this, that he's got to do what the Russian people want. They want this war to end. So I think the escalation we're seeing around, the going into Kyiv, which he's never done before, by the way. He's got to have the Russian soldiers cross over the Dnieper River, enter Kyiv, and take it. That's what's going to take to end this war. Because at that point, Zelensky has nothing. Likely he would flee the country anyways. And then after that, it's over for him. The Russians win, and then again, you'd have to have elections to see who's going to lead the country and take it into its next phase of massive reconstruction. And hopefully the Ukrainians that have fled the country during this war will hopefully be able to go back to their homes, if that's even possible. And so, one other thing I want to make clear to everybody right now, the talks of Russia going to war with Europe is completely the wrong step we need to make. Certainly for the Europeans. You have people like Merz in Germany, that want to build up their army. They are no match. No match. The UK, same thing. France has put their undying pledge to help Ukraine. None of this is going to work out. None of it's going to work out. These armies can't even defend their own country from illegal invaders. They're going to go take on Russia? Please give me a break. Please. What does the UK have? 70,000 soldiers? Oh, give me a break. None of this is going to be effective for any of these countries. It's only going to plunge them into further debt. We know what war is. We know what it is. It leads to nothing but the bankers and, of course, the military security industrial complex in these countries to get uber wealthy, and that's really it. It destroys a country, it destroys a whole generation of men, primarily, and it leads to nothing positive. So the people in these countries where you see, for instance, they want to build up their military, they want to go and take on Russia, it's drama. It's smoke and mirrors. It is obfuscation. Nothing positive is going to come from that. Nothing. And so I hope that people in these countries, of which I have mentioned to you, understand that, no, you're not going to go to war with Russia. Nothing successful is going to come from that. But Putin is aware that if need be necessary, he's ready to go. And by the way, he can make this end very, very quickly, should he want to. I'll just put it to you that way, folks. That's the way it works. Now, on Tuesday of this week, the EU dispersed the first installment of its $6 billion defense package to support the drone procurement as part of the $90 billion Ukraine support law. Where are they getting this money from, by the way? All these countries are in recession. Germany is in, a 3-year recession right now? Where are they getting this money in the EU? It's unbelievable. Where are they getting this money to fund more wars, but they can't kick out illegal aliens from their country that are raping and pillaging the people in these countries? Ask yourself that question. I think you'll find their bona fides lies elsewhere not with their people, certainly. But again, the idea Ukraine joining the EU, again, ridiculousness in and of itself. Zelensky has this idea that he wants Ukraine to get a bid to join the EU. Russia's not going to allow this. What he wants is security, of course, but that's not going to happen. Russia will not allow that to happen. And especially if he's taking over Kyiv, which I believe he will. I think he's going to start having to pick it up a notch very, very soon. This war of attrition has got to end. But I believe if Putin takes over Kyiv, the capital, I believe you'll have elections soon thereafter because Zelensky will have to flee. He's a dead man if he goes back. And his future, I guess he can buy Bugattis and stay in his Italian villa the rest of his pathetic life. I don't know what future he has for him. Certainly not in politics, and certainly not as a Ukrainian citizen. So this pipe dream has got to end. Zelensky's over. We've got to get elections. We've got to end this conflict. And I pray to God this ends sooner rather than later, folks. We have to stop this. And again, if the United States is funding this in any way, that needs to stop as well. So I wanted to inform you about what's taking place because things are kicking up again in Ukraine. I know I've somewhat neglected that in the recent weeks with this war with Iran, and most of the mainstream news media isn't even discussing Russia anymore, largely because Trump has distanced himself from, because again, he knows it's a losing situation. But just understand, Anchorage failed. There is no peace between the United States and Russia, of course. Certainly not in regards to Ukraine, which again, Putin understands very clearly. We spent how much? How many hundreds of billions of dollars to take down Russia through Ukraine, which again was never, ever going to happen. And then you have the idiot countries like Germany, again, Merz, Macron, reportedly now want to support a faster symbolic membership for Ukraine to have them join the European Union. What a joke. What an absolute joke. Again, it's not going to work. So long as there is a NATO, there is no alliance with Ukraine and any of the European countries. Not going to happen. Putin will not allow it. And I think you'll hear, of course, from the diplomats in Russia. They agree with exactly everything I'm saying right now. The only smart country in Europe, I believe right now, Hungary really is the only country that's signaled the opposition to take any fast track for Ukraine to join the EU bloc. So it's not going to work. Okay, because then they know exactly that Should Ukraine misstep, then they're all in war with Russia. Who would want that? Why would you want the burden of that? And by the way, NATO needs to go away. It needs to end. The Warsaw Pact ended long ago, folks. It's time for us to get out of NATO. Let's stop this once and for all. All right. So now that I've gotten that off my chest right now, and we've discussed Russia, now that you're all informed about what's going on right now, let's talk about the weather. I know that sounds odd. Jerace, you talk about the news. Why are you talking about the weather to us? We want to know the most relevant articles. This is very relevant to you, folks. Again, this is affecting your utility bills right now. We got a hot summer ahead of us. We got a hot couple days ahead of us this 4th of July weekend. Again, we're all going to be celebrating still, but it's going to be hot out. So you got to take precautions against sunglasses, wear the hats, make sure you're staying cool, get in the AC if you need to, and make sure you're staying hydrated first and foremost. But what's happening right now? We've got the American electrical grid now entering the hottest month of the year with record-setting amounts of new power generation, along with the temperatures we're seeing right now. I mean, we're looking at temperatures that are expected to hit in the, topping 100 degrees in New York City, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, D.C. Yeah, many other cities too, especially on the eastern seaboard. I was looking at Los Angeles, though. Beautiful weather this weekend. Mid-70s, low 60s at night. Beautiful weather. You can't beat weather in Southern California, folks. You just can't. Now, if you're in the Central Valley, that's a different story right now. But SoCal right now, beautiful. Especially by the beach, you can't beat it. It's like paradise on earth. Anyways, now that I've talked up, Southern California, let's talk about the issue at hand here. Right now, there's an influx of 58.5 gigawatts of new resources. This comes out of the Wall Street Journal. And it's dominated by solar and battery storage. Now, this has reduced the widespread blackout risks that the country's faced in recent years. And what I think is great about this, though, what's important about this, we've got to understand where our power actually comes from. Most of the power in the country comes from either carbon-based fuels, think about coal, natural gas, petroleum. We've also got nuclear energy in available states of which we still provide that. Roughly about 18% comes from that. 41% comes from the natural gas, 17% from the coal. Very, very little, under a percentage, comes from the petroleum. And then, of course, you have your renewables, right? The remaining percentages. Wind, solar power, hydro-based, biomass, geothermal. They make up that remainder with the wind and solar that are they're growing somewhat gradually right now, but it's a good backdrop right now, especially when you have a hot summer and you have lots of sunshine, that you can utilize the solar panels. That's when this is actually necessary. That's when this actually can work. And so people say, well, Jerace, you always talk about how you're against EV and this. Yeah, I am against EV to an extent. Again, if you want to buy an EV, go for it. I could care less. I know they're not sustainable for any long distance purpose, of course. And of course, you wouldn't want to be stuck in an EV in traffic for a long time. But the idea, though, that we can utilize all these means to produce energy is very important right now. And by the way, we have to do it especially times where we have a very hot summer like right now, because the grids are going to be very, very strained. But there's also another addendum to this I want you to be very much aware of, especially moving forward. We've talked about the AI boom in this country many times before. Now, the risk of blackouts right now are still considered small right now. That's what's being projected right now. Again, it could happen, could not happen. But when we have things like drought-depleted reservoirs, we have the risk of wildfires, we have the surge of energy in demand right now, again, tied to AI, especially the AI race. That's exacerbating the situation that we find ourselves in, especially right now. But we've got other issues we've got to focus on. Because, again, if this AI comes in, and it's going to take up first of all, it's going to take up lots of water. It's going to take up lots of electricity. It's going to put a massive strain on the power grids, the existing power grids in our municipalities moving forward. So there's two things right now, water and energy. They're going to take up a lot of it. And again, the hot weather sends the air conditioning demand skyrocketing. The ACs are running, especially today. It's almost 100 where I am today. And again, it's going to put pressure both on the power supplies and your electricity bill, especially if you're in California. Never forget that one, too. What are they paying? About, I think, 17 cents per kilowatt? Oh, kilowatt hour? It's unbelievable in California, what they do. But here we go. It says here that the peak summer demand has grown by about 11 gigawatts since last year. So we're using more energy. That's just a common fact. We have to understand this. And that's been met by new resources that include about 30.5 gigawatts of solar, 16 gigawatts of battery storage, and 7 gigawatts of natural gas-fired generation. Now, for some of those power sources, they have limitations, though. Solar is available intermittently, of course, and battery can supply power for about a few hours. So the latter, obviously, are not the main focal point. We've got to make sure that we're getting the right coal, and we have to make sure we're getting the right amounts of natural gas. Well, especially at times right now when we have a strain on the energy because of the war in Iran, we've got problems. Now, I will say this to you, though. What's important right now to understand is a lot of what generates power for the power grids or the electrical grids in our communities, a lot of it comes from the petroleum, excuse me, not the petroleum, but the natural gas reserves coming from the Marcellus and Permian basins. We get a lot of it imported from places like Canada, for instance, the shale formations. And again, these are extracted from underground reservoirs in the United States. So we have a lot of this here in the U.S. Not a lot of this has to be imported. But what we're seeing right now is we have to produce more of it. Again, we have the coal mine right here in the United States, Appalachia, Wyoming, Illinois. We have a lot of these reserves. That's also, again, very, very crucial that we have that. By the way, Trump has opened that back up for, again, the coal mining in the country, which, again, is a smart move. We know we're going to probably be drilling in many different places. Think Anwar. We talked about the strategic petroleum reserves, and a lot of that, though, the issues that we're about to face come from heavy crude, which we don't even produce. So that's not really an issue with the power grid per se. That's going to be an issue for the diesel and jet fuel that we may run out of in the next couple of weeks, ladies and gentlemen. That's just a truism. I don't tell you that to scare you. I tell you that because this is where we are. But again, Trump has been on it with drill, baby, drill. Let's get some more oil production in this country. Let's uptick our numbers. We already produce about 13.6 million barrels of oil in this country per day. And again, that would be the shale formations that we just talked about. We have things like the Keystone XL pipeline that brought in a lot of the Canadian select grade of petroleum, what's called sour crude, into the country. All that goes in the power grid. But one other thing I think we could utilize here, and especially in times where oil is tight, again, the oil prices are going to go up. That's just a truism because what's taking place is on the global market. We're going to see the price of oil begin to spike. And once you get to that, what the market is what the market is. Doesn't matter if the United States is the number one producer of oil in the world, which we are, by the way. What matters is how is this going to be sold on the market? What does it take to have it refined? And is it going to cost more to get it to where it needs to go? That's definitely going to happen, regardless of that. But one thing I think we can improve on in this country, right now we've only got about 18% of nuclear energy being used. Again, using the steam turbines powered by nuclear fission. Again, it's a cleaner type of fuel. I think we need to get some nuclear energy back in the country, especially in places like California, of course. I always talk to you about this. But this is a good idea because, again, you can't rely just on renewables. Never going to work. You're never not going to drill for oil. And we can only produce so much at any given time. Let's get the nuclear energy going, especially right now in times when you have the AI boom coming right now and the formation of these data centers right now that will require lots of energy to run. And if they're going to be pulling from the existing power grid, then you're going to have problems. You're not going to be able to use solar and battery. That's not a reliable source because you can only use it for so much time because, again, it's got to be sunny to get the solar panels up and running. And, again, the batteries only give you a couple hours worth. So you've got to have other alternatives. Those are backup measures. By the way, I'm not opposed to using the solar either. If you want to put a solar panel on your house, go for it. What the hell do I care? But we need to have other resources as well. And I think right now, especially with what we're talking about right now, the cost of things going up, pulling from those, again, natural gas, the slight amount of petroleum and what have you, we need to make sure that we are having other alternatives. So what do I mean about this? When I talk to you about this, we're talking about the average, the typical household between June and September this year will pay on average $792 for their utility. That's a lot. That's going to be up from about $717 last year. So summer cooling costs have increased by nearly 40% since 2020. It's gone up a lot. Just like everything else in this country, everything has increased significantly. That is a massive shift. And I told you this earlier in the year, by the way, folks. And again, I hate to say I told you so, but I did tell you so. So I'm going to tell you to you again. I told you at the end of December. I remember this significantly, because I said this is going to be a big problem moving forward. I said to you on this very program at the end of December, and go back and listen to any of my shows where I'm talking about this, I said the cost of energy in this country is going to increase by, first it was 9.2%, but then it shifted to 10.2%. And now what they're expecting, get this, U.S. households are expected to spend about 10.5% more to cool their homes this summer than it was last summer. So what did I tell you? I said, get ready for utility bills. For at the time it was heating. Now the AC units are cranking up even more because, again, we have a hot summer ahead of us. Right now we have, again, 100-degree weather in a lot of the eastern seaboard states. You obviously want to get away from that humidity. So what do? You turn the AC. You have to have it on more because it's staying hot for longer now. We're not getting any of that relief right now. It happens sometimes. And as a result of that, you're paying more in that general span, June to September. And the kilowatt hours are racking up, and you're paying a lot more for it. And we're seeing the rising of electricity prices because of these hotter summers. So, again, I hate to say I told you so, but I kind of did, folks. So I was a little bit ahead of the curve than this Wall Street Journal article, I'd have to say. And by the way, benchmark U.S. natural gas futures are trading at about 10% below a year ago, levels thanks to strong domestic production and comfortable spring weather that enables traders to sock away fuel storage in the storage caverns. Yeah. Yep. However, supplies are especially robust in the West, where inventories are roughly 23% higher than the 5-year average, according to the Energy Information Administration right now. Now, the EIA, that's what I want to say. The forecast that the volume of the natural gas burned to generate electricity will be about the same as last summer, with renewable energy sources such as solar meeting the added demand for air conditioning. Again, I talked with you about the unpredictable AI, the risks that come with that. There are other things too, though. We have outage risks that we already discussed as well. But we've got to make sure, folks, we have a steady supply of resources for energy in this country. If we don't have those, we're going to start getting what California has, and many times, is rolling brownouts and blackouts, which we don't want to have all across the country. Let's not turn the rest of the country into California. Please don't do that. In fact, let's do the exact opposite. Let's invest more in nuclear energy. Yes, we need to continue to drill. Yes, we need to stop what's taking place in the Persian Gulf so we get more of our heavy crude back into the United States. And again, hopefully we'll start to see those prices go down and not up 10.5%. Not a positive thing. So stay cool this weekend, folks. Stay hydrated. You definitely have to do that as we move on. All right, let's talk about something else very, very important. I want to discuss this with you because, again, we have to know what's going on in our political parties. And I've said this to you before. Right now, there is a split in the Republican Party. Anybody paying attention can see this. There is a split in the Republican Party. There's also a split in the Democratic Party, too, except that reality has been going on for quite some time, with the influx of the Democratic Socialists of America taking over the party, which are communists, all right? But we've known this is going to take place before. That's the Democrat side. Now we're talking about this on the Republican side, our side. And now we have out of the Hill, it says here that former GOP Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia said that she is contemplating creating a new political party following her public split with the Republican Party. And why do I say this to you? She wants to create a new party because she's now splitting with the Republicans. This is a major problem. And I'll tell you why in just a second. Third parties never work. And I hear this from a lot of people. We need to create a new party. There needs to be a new party system. The Republican and Democrat parties are not working. I don't disagree with you on that. I really don't. But here's the problem. When we got the Republican Party, we ended the Whig Party. We didn't keep the Whig Party and continue on to fight with the Democrats. The Whigs ended and the Republicans, thanks to Abraham Lincoln, formed in 1854, that was the new party moving forward. The Whigs were completely phased out. There was no Whig and Republican Party. So it wasn't a third-party system. It was, we have Democrats now and we have Republicans. But what's being said right now, especially from what I'm hearing from independents, libertarians, these Republicans like myself who are fed up with the way the party is moving, they're talking about creating a brand new party. And I say that's a bunch of nonsense. You don't want to do that. And the reason I say that too is because any time the Republican ticket has been split, it's always handed the win to the Democrats. Let's give you an example. 1912. You had William Howard Taft, the incumbent president, Republican, stay in the race, and then Teddy Roosevelt comes in as the alternative in the Republican Party, as the Bull Moose Party at the time. And what happened in that race was they gave it to Woodrow Wilson. Big problem. Had one or the other ran, I don't think we'd ever hear of Woodrow Wilson's name, folks. And I think that would be a wonderful thing had that happen. But it didn't happen. It ended up giving us Woodrow Wilson. And then, of course, Wilson gets in, and then he wins again. And then what do we get in the second half of Wilson's term? We had World War I. Yeah, we had World War I. How did that go? We had the federal income tax issued, which, by the way, was only supposed to be about 3% to the highest earners in this country. It ended up going to 90%. So it was a complete lie from the start. We had the creation of the Federal Reserve. We had the ending of the states electing who their senators were. They brought it to a direct election of which the entire state votes versus the state legislatures. Do you know how detrimental all this is, by the way? I mean, Woodrow Wilson essentially destroyed the United States. Essentially, that's what he did. He is everything the Constitution is not. He rejects the founding. During his 2 terms as U.S. president, he hated the country. By the way, he lamented about this later on, shortly before his death. And also, he's the reason for the 25th Amendment, too, by the way. Because we know he was very, very ill, especially for the remainder of the 6 months he was president. His wife was likely running the White House. That's why we have the 25th Amendment right now. But anyways, my point to say this to you is that Wilson is the two-party split is the reason why we had Woodrow Wilson. That was a pivotal moment in American history. And the other pivotal moment I would point to for Republicans would be the 1990s. 92, we had George Herbert Walker Bush, and of course we had Ross Perot, again, a conservative out of Texas. That split the Republican ticket as well. And he did it again in 96. We had Bob Dole as the Republican candidate and Ross Perot yet again. And we have Bill Clinton again for a second time. And if you look at the 1990s, a lot of the problems we have right now are because of what Bill Clinton did. And a lot of you will say, Joyce, we had a great economy in the 90s. We had cheap gas, we had, this and that. I don't remember any issues. And I say to you, yeah, because a lot of that was Reagan's doing. It had nothing to do with Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton was just the start of the downfall that we saw after 2000. That's just true, folks. Again, look at NAFTA, look at Glass-Steagall, look at, again, bringing China to the World Trade Organization. Look at, in my field, media broadcasting, there were thousands of independent radio stations, TV stations, all across America, owned by various different groups. Bill Clinton comes in, and he decides to let the FCC remove its rule, and it went from... I believe it was 50% was owned by the bigs, and now they've eaten up a majority of the market. That's what Bill Clinton did to us, folks. That's Bill Clinton for you in a nutshell. So instead of getting more voices, you get less voices out there. You allow the bigs to buy up the small people. Again, we see this throughout many different things in the United States. The bigs get bigger and the small get smaller. Bill Clinton helped foment a lot of that. Now, that being said, let's move it back to where we are today. Should the Republican Party switch? No. No, for the reasons I've just illustrated to you. We don't want that. Now, even she said it's difficult to launch a third party, so the reality is that this isn't something that gets off the ground in just a couple of campaign cycles. This is a movement that has to be developed and would take time to develop. Again, we can make a third type of party, but it has to be within the Republican Party. Because this is what we are from. We are coming from the Republican ticket. We just don't want to be the establishment. And as a result of that, like you're seeing the Democratic Socialists winning up these seats, and they'll likely succeed in the general elections come this fall, come November. We need to make sure, moving forward, we have whatever they call it, American First, MAGA, I don't care what they call it, America Only, whatever it may be called. It has to exist within the Republican Party. And you win your seats slowly but surely, and you begin to take over the party that way. That's the way it has to work. Because you're not going to be able to split up the Republican Party and expect to ever win, especially with the way the demographics are in this country, ever again. Ever. Now, this is why the Founding Fathers hated parties. They didn't want two different parties because they knew they would split the country. If everyone's a part of the same country, the person with the best ideas generally is going to win. Now, of course, it tends to be who has the most money thrown at them. Well, of course, when you have greedy billionaires out there, and I don't say that because I mean that the billionaires are all greedy by accumulating their own wealth. What I'm saying is you have the Soroses of the world that are greedy, that want to just destroy the country. They throw their money into everything that takes the country down, not build it up. So we have to be on our feet with this. We cannot allow a Republican Party to split, because that would just hand everything to the Democrats, and we know exactly what they want to do moving forward. They want to have D.C. and Puerto Rico statehood. They want to pack the Supreme Courts. They want trans Bill of Rights. They want, again, everything to be socialistic in terms of the economy. That would just definitely bring everything to a halt as far as GDP in this country. Again, we know they would do everything to remove gun rights in this country. Everything would be upended on its head. We'd be careening to the bottom, folks, if the Democrats continue to take over this country. They are not stopping. So why are we stopping? Why are we just putting in because we had Thomas Massie lose his race? And by the way, I was upset about that, as you know. I'm upset about what happened with Trump with Marjorie Taylor Greene. I didn't like it. But Trump is not going to be president forever. And again, this is we're in such a weird kind of dichotomy with what's going on right now, because Trump is so popular and he's extremely wealthy. And by the way, he's increased his wealth by 3 times upon taking office last January, just so we understand that. But he's well known, he's popular. Again, he was the one that really started the MAGA movement. So he's really the face of the party right now. And again, he talks a lot, as you know, very boisterous. And his word means a lot in this party, because there's a lot of people that just simply go along with the flow. But you probably wouldn't have that. Let's say, for instance, you had a J.D. Vance as president, or a Marco Rubio, or a Ron DeSantis, or anyone else that is considering running. Trump is an enigma to the political stretch we're in right now, because he was so famous prior to running for office. Everybody knew who Donald Trump was. I knew who Donald Trump was. And I don't watch TV. I never watched The Apprentice, but I knew who Donald Trump was because he was around all the time. He was always in the public eye. So it's a little bit of a different thing when we find ourselves in the Republican Party today, because he's such this big force in the party, because he's such this, I guess you'd say, popular candidate just in American history. He's one of the most well-known people in the world. So he would be big today if he was president or not. Donald Trump would be that voice. So I think things will quiet down moving forward. I think, again, most Americans see the importance in that. That yes, a president generally doesn't go and start endorsing candidates. Not that I can remember. I know that we obviously have the Speaker of the House would go out and campaign. Other Republicans would campaign for one another in various states. It's seldom that the president would go in and start telling you who to vote for in rural Kentucky. It just wasn't a thing until very recently. Now, of course, we have social media. It's easy to get into fights online, calling people traitors, and this. We never would have that. You wouldn't have the president of the United States. You don't have a George W. Bush going on in 2006 saying, "Oh, this person in my party is a traitor. You need to vote for." It just wouldn't be happening like that. So we're in a new realm for sure, but we cannot allow the party to split. Is what I'm trying to tell you. And I know Tucker Carlson has talked about this. I know, obviously, Marjorie Taylor Greene is talking about this. The party must exist within the Republican Party. Mark my words on that one. And then as that group of people, whatever you want to call them, begins to grow, then you have consideration to say, okay, well, look it, I'm a part of this faction of the Republican Party. Just like Bernie Sanders hijacked the Democratic Party by saying he's an independent, which he is not. He's to the left of every single one of them. So this is the way the Republicans have got to operate. If they split the ticket, it is a surefire lose. Every single presidential election moving forward. Because you cannot split the ticket. The parties are too closely aligned in terms of who supports them. We know Donald Trump beat Kamala Harris by several million votes. But that can't happen moving forward. It just isn't going to work. So whoever becomes, whoever the nominee in 2028 is, they've got to bring the party together. There has to be room for the Thomas Masseys and the Tucker Carlsons and the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and the Candace Owens, along with the existing Republican establishment as it is. And as time moves on, those people of that ilk, those people that speak freely, like myself, people that want to see real change in this country now, that believe in MAGA, that believe in America first, will want certain things to change within the Republican Party. And you will see the Republican Party change in the near future. It is going to change. So when Trump leaves, things will change in the party. Now, whether he voices his opinion moving forward, whether he says, I stand with this candidate or that candidate, again, I don't know how much water that will bear, but whoever takes that mantle moving forward, whether it's a J.D. Vance, a Rubio, a DeSantis, whoever it may be, Thomas Massey, for all we know, whoever it could be a Chris Christie, God forbid, but what I'm trying to say to you is whoever takes over from President Trump will be the new face of the party. And that person will have lots of mending to do. This is why I bring this up to you, folks, because we cannot split. Splitting the party would be certainly nothing positive for any of us. All right, folks, and let me just say to you, while we criticize what Trump does with the war in Iran, while we criticize certain aspects of his domestic policy, here's something we can look at that's a bit positive. Let me tell you about this article out of Politico. Let's get right to it. A group of farmers walked into the Oval Office for some change, and they got it, and this is something that Maha can at least say hell yeah to. We need to make America healthy again. See, we have that same acronym. Make America healthy again. There we go. Let's make America think again, too, while we're at it. Now, this is something that's very, very important, especially when we're talking about farming in America and a method now that has been kind of upticking in the recent years. It's called regenerative agriculture or regenerative farming. This is very, very important, especially for people like me. I tend to go with, for instance, if I'm buying steaks, I'm buying regenerative farmed beef. That's what I'm doing. And the focus, of course, is restoring the natural processes of the soil development, how the animals are fed, reducing the environmental impact, of course, eschewing things like pesticides and all these other herbicides they throw into the soil. We got to get away from this. And this method is to withstand things like climate change, which they talk about. But what it's coming back to is not depleting, but it's building up again. It's taking things back to its roots, literally. And when you buy from regenerative farmers, you're buying higher quality foods. This is what we want. We should want this in America. And what Trump did with this bill, which I thought was very, very good, by the way, it actually offers up something very positive. And by the way, he had a little a spat going on between a lobbyist. Yeah, he brought in a lobbyist to also discuss this executive order that he did end up signing. But he had K Street in the Oval Office along with the Farmers of America. And one of these people he had in the room was a gentleman named Zippy Duvall. This is the president of the American Farm Bureau Federation. And this guy represents roughly 5 million farmers. Again, a very big part of the constituency for President Trump. And is probably always in President Trump's ear. Now, what Duvall said to the president was that he was concerned that the order would issue this negative impact from the pesticide use, and said that he would not be able to advocate for President Trump on behalf of his farmers, right? Keep that in mind, if he signed this. This is what's being said from people that were in the Oval Office. The farmers that were like, hey, I'm a regenerative farmer. I'm not for the pesticide use. I don't spray all these toxins on my supply here. We don't want it. Now, Trump went back and forth with Duvall, asked him why he opposed it. And really, Duvall said that he really couldn't do it because he hadn't even read the executive order, no doubt. But he understands with regenerative farming that it's the opposite of what he is advocating for. So again, think about big agriculture. Think about the lobbies, right? The K Streets, right? That advocate for big business. That's what it comes down to. But thankfully, Trump, whether he knows it or not, did the right thing. Now, Trump said in a statement he didn't see how what he was doing was harming agriculture. I don't know that Trump knows much about agriculture, but nonetheless, this is good because we need that alternative in this country. This is a major win for farmers that want to develop land and they want that support, and that's what this bill did. It allows the Department of Agriculture to now help support the regenerative agriculture expansion in this country. And things like, for instance, they want to promote technologies that improve efficiency and keep decision-making local and practical. Good. Local is good. Buying local is good. I tell you to do that all the time on the program. If you can buy from a regenerative farmer in your area, get to know them, buy from them at farmers markets, or just buy local when you can, or local stores. I know they have those in some places in the country. Do that. I mean, it's brilliant. Again, they want to talk about in this bill also EPA chemical review changes. So the EPA must prioritize the approval of alternative crop protection tools. Again, this has to do with pre-harvest dissection chemicals to ensure safety and accurate labeling with the food processing. Also, something that's important too, they're talking about the Health and Human Services, the USDA, the EPA must now develop new frameworks to study how multiple chemical exposures affect human health. This is great too. I'm sure Mr. Duvall did not like this one at all. And of course, the NIH will also launch a grand prize challenge to spur innovation in this country. Again, a big win for agricultural farmers, smaller farmers, which have been neglected for several decades, going back to even the Nixon years. All right, when his agricultural secretary, Earl Butz, said, go big or go broke. That's no good for smaller farmers. These are farmers that produce better food, by and large. And of course, the biofuel market integration. This is a companion of the USDA ruling that connects regenerative practices to biofuel markets, allowing farmers really to earn premiums for regeneratively grown corn, soybeans, canola, things like that. By the way, I never eat any of those, just so we understand this. But again, we're looking at different alternatives to producing corn and soybeans and other things I wouldn't put in my body. I would never put canola in my body, ever. Seed oils are toxic, as you know. because you listen to my show. But this is a very nice executive order. This is Trump letting his U.S. Department of Agriculture to support local, regenerative, organic, small farmers. Yes, yes, and more yes. More of this, Mr. President. This is what we want. This is why we elected you. And I hope that we can get more farmers from this, because we need more farmers, we need more ranchers, we need to support them in any way possible. So I hope this will help take off. And again, we have to make sure we respect what our farmers do, our ranchers do. They produce for us. And we want more. We want more choices, not less in this country. There you go. So we have to make an incentive for it. That's number one. We have to make an incentive for why should you go out and become a farmer? Why should you get into ranching? What profit can you have from this? All these things are very, very crucial, folks. Without our farmers, we have nothing. And without our farmers existing in the way we are right now, we have no green revolution in this country, which developed after World War II, where we have people producing for the masses in this country. So we need more farming, less bureaucracy around it, of course, but let's get the farmers getting more profits. That's what we should want. Make incentives, make it easier to purchase land, to buy cattle, and what have you. By the way, our population size, our herd size is greatly down. We need to also increase that in the country. So let's see if we can get some regenerative farmers, ranchers doing it this way. Because again, what we put in our body helps make America healthy. We put trash, these pesticides, herbicides, fungicides. Ugh, it's disgusting. The way they clean. So I watched something the other day too, not to go off topic, but I was watching, and this was organic food. And I forget what company it was. But they're putting the lettuce and the kale and the spinach through this bleaching process, and it's just disgusting. We got to get away. We've got to get back to our roots and how we eat food. Eat whole foods, not the processed, ultra-processed junk that seems to have found its way to the United States. All right, folks, let's talk about something else that's very pressing right now. We've got about 9 minutes left in the program. This comes from the New York Post, and it says that Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, who is a dunce, I added that part in there for you, pardons illegal migrant convicted of sexually assaulting a 10-year-old girl. Well, no standard is low enough for Tim Walz. Why the hell would you pardon, last month, an illegal alien? I hate when they say illegal immigrant. There's no such thing as an illegal immigrant. You're either an immigrant or you're an illegal alien. And that's what this scumbag was. Now, with the recommendation by the Minnesota Clemency Review Commission, which is led by Tim Walz, for some reason, why he would lead anything is beyond me. But Tim Walz, State Attorney General Keith Ellison, and State Chief Justice Natalie Hudson decided to grant a pardon for Laos national illegal alien who doesn't belong in this country, Tao Lu Vang, who is 42 years old. And at its June 10th meeting, according to a letter informing Vang of the decision from Carly Stark, the executive director of the State Clemency Review Commission, let him know that, yes, the pardon essentially gives Vang a clean slate right now. Isn't that wonderful? We're celebrating 250 years in this country, and you have elected state representatives now giving clemency to an illegal alien who sexually assaulted a young 10-year-old girl. He was convicted in, let's look at this, 2006 of first-degree criminal sexual assault. This is the scum of the earth. They don't belong anywhere in civil society. This guy doesn't even belong in our country, and they're giving him a pardon. But listen to this. Between 2002 and 2006, he repeatedly sexually assaulted this young girl. And at one point even offered her $10 to keep quiet about the sexual abuse of which she was enduring. This is coming from the Department of Homeland Security. This guy pleaded guilty to first-degree criminal sexual assault conduct in a plea deal that spared him from going to prison. Can you imagine this? I can't even tell you what I want to say about this guy. But can you imagine someone who doesn't belong in this country is sexually assaulting a young girl, and they are keeping him out of prison? And he's still here in this country. And now the disgraces, which we call the leadership in Minnesota, have granted him a pardon. when he should have been handed over to Department of Homeland Security back then, and his ass should have been deported back then. Again, I hate to use the vulgarity, but I'm so pissed off about this. I can't believe this is happening in our country. Look at this. Arrested in 2005 on charges. He admitted to having sexual contact with a young girl, but blamed cultural norms in Thailand. Oh, of course. It's Thailand's fault. No, it's really our immigration policies that have allowed people to even come in from Thailand. And, of course, our wide-open southern border that allows everybody and anybody to come into the country and not assimilate to the values of which we have here. Why is this guy still in the country? Why has he not been arrested? Why has he not been deported? I've had enough of this nonsense with these criminal illegal aliens. We talk about the one from Maryland. Again, the name escapes me right now. Thank God. I don't want to remember who these people are. But we deport him. They brought him back. Then we have a judge saying you can't deport him. He's been here too long. Get him out of here. They don't belong here. They have no jurisdiction here. That's a word for you this week. Remember, jurisdiction? They have no jurisdiction to be inside the United States. They did not come in the country legally. They are not supposed to be here. So why are they here is the next question I have for you. Round them up. Due process. Yes, of course. Let them have their day in court. You hold them on. When they say, oh, yes, you're not a citizen, sir. Sorry, you have to go. You say bon voyage, and that's the end of it. And, of course, we don't do this in this country for some reason. I have no idea why. But the fact that you have a sitting governor, a man who ran for vice president of the United States, would allow a sex offender to be pardoned, especially when one is an illegal alien, is mind-boggling, folks. I think at the very, very least, it's mind-boggling. And it's disgusting that you have somebody who would allow someone like this to remain in the United States and you pardon them. Should not happen ever, ever, ever. Now, I say this too because of a couple reasons. For my next article I'm going to read to you. This is another article that's heart-wrenching. It's appalling to me that, again, we allow illegal aliens to stay in this country and they are able to do heinous acts against our citizens. This comes out of Fox News. I'm actually going to let you listen first to a mother, an angel mom, who discussed her 18-year-old daughter who was murdered by an illegal alien piece of human excrement while she was attending Loyola University, Chicago as a freshman. Her name is Sheridan Gorman, and her mother was speaking to Congress just the other day. And she has some good questions. Why in the world are we allowing illegal aliens to reside in this country and allow them to go out and kill American citizens? Listen to Jessica Gorman right now speaking about her daughter on clip 1.
On March 19th, Sheridan went with friends to the lakefront in Chicago because they hoped they might see the northern lights. She never saw those lights. The man accused of murdering my daughter is Jose Medina, an illegal immigrant from Venezuela who should not have even been in this country. And even after committing a crime and having an outstanding warrant, he was left on the streets of Chicago to murder my innocent American child. But this story, it's not about him. This story is about my Sheridan. It's about how failed border policies, sanctuary city laws, and twisted leaders refused to cooperate with ICE. They sent her to her grave. It's about a government and politicians that forgot their first priority. And the question before this committee is painfully simple. When did protecting our American citizens stop being your first priority? And even more important, why did protecting our American citizens stop being your first priority? I want an explanation, I need one, and I deserve one.
But she's not going to get one. Because lowlifes like Pramila Jayapal on the committee, for some reason, could get less than a damn about it. Oh, they say, oh, we feel so sorry for you. Then they move on to excoriate President Trump's birthright citizenship, which has nothing to do with what we're talking about. We're talking about illegal aliens being in the country and why the Democrats are not doing anything about that. Why don't they give a damn? Because this is their voting bloc, ladies and gentlemen. This is who they support. This takes down the country. This ensures their power forever and ever. And that's exactly what they want. There's no other way to say it to you. They don't give a damn about American children, especially white children. They don't care, and they want this to happen. Why? Because then again, well, they can have more laws for guns. That's why they want this. They have a good voting bloc, so they can keep them in power. That's where we are right now, folks. We're out of time. Thank you again for being here, as always. Make sure you're staying prepped. As always, food, water, medicine, ammunition, fuel, money, tools, anything to be self-sufficient, folks. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you back here tomorrow before we hit our Independence Day weekend with more groundbreaking news, so make sure you're here for that. Until next time, be good, stay busy. God bless.